So this is my second attempt at making this video. It's the first attempt, recorded for 50 minutes, which in hindsight, it was far too long. Nobody wants to listen to a 50-minute long video. I know I sure as hell really wouldn't want to. But the worst part about it all was the fact that upon finishing the video, I went to upload it to YouTube and realised that I hadn't turned my microphone on. So yeah, that happened. A bit pissed off about that. So maybe I will try my damnedest to make this video shorter for my own peace of mind, as well as for, viewers themselves who tune into the videos and whatnot. But yeah, so I came across this today, just before I was about to go into work, and I didn't really have much time to delve too much into it. But now that I've come home, obviously, and I went through it in real time, the first time in the video that I made, obviously the Scottish Government have started endorsing and working in tandem with anti-racist organisations, the usual bullshit. Education Scotland, SER, SRER, ScotDec, another one. As you can see on the screen here, teachers in Scotland have given guidance, on decolonising the curriculum. The package also includes advice on how to discuss race and normalise diversity within lesson subjects. We've got this one here from the National. Scottish Government launches anti-racism resources for teachers. New learning materials for teachers in Scotland aim to embed anti-racism in all aspects of school life, with Education Scotland producing a number of different resources which encourage an anti-racist ethos throughout the education system, with the guidance saying that pupils should routinely see language, content and imagery that reflects a diversity of culture, identities, experiences, including their own. Going on to say that normalising diversity is a more powerful approach than one-off lessons which celebrate difference, as they can have unintended consequences of othering those from minority groups, promoting decolonising the curriculum in order to challenge long-standing biases and omissions. So, straight from the horse's mouth, of course, the Scottish Government's own website goes on to kind of repeat the same jargon. A new package of support materials for teachers and staff will embed anti-racism and race equality in all aspects of life. Education Scotland's resource will ensure children and young people see language, content and imagery that reflects the diversity of culture. As I said, it's just sort of the same jargon. It goes on to say here, though, that Education Secretary, the feminist bulldog Shirley-Ann Somerville, has said racism of any form has no place in Scotland, which is why embedding anti-racism into the ethos and practice of our education system is imperative. This new Education Scotland guidance builds on existing resources available and was developed in collaboration with a range of young people, education practitioners and organisations with lived experience of racism and expertise in addressing it. Our schools and our curriculum seek to promote and inspire a sense of belonging, inclusion and social justice for learners, practitioners and the wider community. Having an education system that provides an opportunity for anti-racism learning, debate and leadership is crucial in our attempt to eradicate racism in wider society, with Education Scotland Chief and HMI Chief Inspector of Education Gail Gorman saying it is essential that all our children and young people develop an understanding of the world around them and how it has been shaped, as well as the appreciation of the contribution made by people from a range of cultures and identities. New resources will support the profession to teach and build a society which advances equality and actively rejects and challenges racial discrimination, which doesn't fucking exist. We hope that our whole school approach to race equality and anti-racism will help children and young people develop as responsible global citizens. There's UN reference number 1. So obviously the 3 links that are provided here was kind of what I went through in the last video, hence why it took me to 50 odd bloody minutes. First one being Anti-Racist Toolkit for Educators from ScotDec, saying here that this resource is for all educators who want to make a start at understanding what anti-racism is and how we as teachers and pupils, allies and individuals with lived experience of racism can start our anti-racist journey as individuals, communities and wider society. ScotDec being committed to ensuring anti-racist approaches are embedded in our structures, partnerships and practice. In collaboration with the Scottish National Party and the Scottish Government, we have begun an update of our resource, A. Adams Bairns, exploring equality and diversity in Scotland's past and present. Also produced with assistance from the EU, of course. Then we have the Education Scotland, of course, where they go on to say that all learners have the right to learning in an equitable environment where all cultures, identities and languages are recognised and valued, and where the curriculum responds to the diverse needs of individual learners, reflecting the uniqueness of their communities. Why are race equality and anti-racist education important? A few here just to make this brief. Anti-racist education helps children to understand and realise their own rights and the rights of others within the school, within the community, and globally. Anti-racist education helps learners to understand the harmful consequences of racism and encourages them to actively challenge it whenever it occurs. It nurtures a historical literacy in learners, which helps them to understand all of Scotland's history, including our historical role in empire, colonialism, and transatlantic slavery, and the diversity of Scottish society in the past. And then we have SIR themselves, as I said, the anti-racist shower of excrement. That's really realistically what I refer to them as, because I'm so sick of reading their crap, and crap really it is far more often than not. Introduction to Anti-Racist Curriculum Development is a guide for teachers aimed at supporting better practice in Scotland's schools. All teachers in Scotland should feel confident in building a curriculum that meets the needs of a diverse range of learners and improves relationship between children and young people. This can feel like a challenge when divisive influences, bias and stereotypes are present in our society. Anti-racist approaches can help to mitigate against those influences, creating a better environment for learning. The guide also outlines why anti-racist approaches are important in curriculum development, exploring the barriers that don't exist that have hampered race equality in education, such as a lack of brown teachers. Then goes on to explore 3 components for developing anti-racist approaches to curriculum for development. Take a breath. 3 bullet points, and I'll finish on this little bit. They want to decolonize the curriculum, build intercultural competence, and reduce racism, prejudice, and discrimination. So yeah. I love this bit as well here though. Something I actually didn't notice in the video that I recorded prior to this, which says further resources for practitioners are available here in a collection of wakelets and are also referenced throughout the overview document. But I clicked on this link here, and it says this collection of wakelets signposts educators to a range of websites and resources which promote race equality education and ensure that all learners can flourish in an inclusive environment which actively promotes equality and tackles racism. So what have we got here? Equality advice for schools in Scotland. I actually haven't clicked on this before. Race equality organisations. Curriculum ideas. Yeah. Anti-racist education. Prejudice-based bullying and hate crime. Support for different minority ethnic groups. Professional learning and teaching. Experiences of BAMEs. Intersectionality. Safeguarding and racism. But obviously, like the way that it works in Scotland with the curriculum for excellence, to my understanding anyway, is teachers can they get to do, like, they've got units set out and they get to pick and choose what they so choose to teach to these children. So the idea that's now being brought in is that teachers need to, look at all this anti-racist material you now have. You need to get involved. And one of the complaints that comes up in these publications at some point is that some teachers aren't, totally on board. And obviously the way that they frame it is that it's because the vast majority of them are white, they don't experience racism, so they don't think that they need to implement anti-racist material into the curriculum or the classroom, etc., etc. It's usual bollocks, but anyway. So yeah, I don't really know where I'm going to start with this, because obviously now I feel like this video is somewhat fake because I'm kind of repeating myself because it's things that I already looked at, but here goes nothing. So Education Scotland, one of the publications, of course, Education Scotland, which is endorsed dramatically from the SNP, promoting and developing race equality and anti-racist education. An overview, and who do we have? We have the feminist bulldog, who's really starting to be a thorn on my side, metaphorically speaking, because I'm just getting sick of this feminist imbecile. Nonetheless, over the last 18 months, global events have shone a powerful light in the deep inequalities in our society which disproportionately affect minority ethnic groups. We must now grasp this opportunity to fully understand the issues at hand and to be bold, fucking bold, man, and be innovative in affecting meaningful and sustainable, yep, that's another UN reference, Sustainable Development Goals, addressing those issues as of critical importance, not only to allow minority ethnic young people a sense of belonging, but in order that all our children and young people have the opportunity to become the types of citizens that we want to have in a diverse and integrated Scotland for the future. You see this? To become the types of citizens, global citizens, UN reference number 3, that we want to have in a diverse and integrated Scotland for the future. Yeah, okay, yeah. Tackling these issues is difficult. It needs all of us to become comfortable with discomfort and with challenging and relearning some of our usual ways of thinking and doing things. Our schools and our curriculum seek to promote and inspire a sense of belonging, inclusion, and social justice for learners, practitioners, and the wider community. Racism of any form has no place in Scotland, and our education system provides an opportunity for the learning, debate, and leadership that will help to eradicate racism in wider society. The guidance setting out the imperative, that sets out the imperative of embedding anti-racism into the ethos and practice of our educational system, developed by Education Scotland in collaboration with a range of young people, education practitioners, and organisations with lived experience. Okay. The purpose of this overview is to support practitioners to explore the following. What is race equality and anti-racist education? Why do we need to discuss these in establishments? What do we need to do individually and together to promote race equality and anti-racist education? Reflective questions provide an opportunity for all staff to come together to discuss race equality and anti-racism as an appropriate to local context. Scotland is a wonderfully diverse society, and we are all, each and every one of us, equal citizens, global citizenship, and stakeholders of Scotland. Our vision is that Scotland in 2030 is a Scotland where people are healthier, happier, and treated with respect. And where opportunities, wealth, and power are spread more equally. Oh, okay. Yeah. Anti-racist education empowers children and young people to engage in an increasingly diverse and globalised world where people can be united in their common humanity and enhanced by their diversity. It really annoys me the way that this wishy-washy rhetoric comes out, because that is what it appears on at face value, wishy-washy rhetoric. But behind that is malevolent undertones. The term diversity, if you will, is less white people. I know, low-hanging fruit hot take for myself. But what this realistically then means is they are trying to educate, normalise diversity, using their own terminology, by the way, quote unquote, normalise diversity, normalise it to white children so as they become an increasingly shrinking majority in the country, by extension then leading to minority status in the future. It's normalised. You see, this is twofold. They're flooding the country with BAMEs across the United Kingdom, but they're simultaneously trying to re-educate the minds of white children to think that it's normal. Enhanced by their diversity. Empowering learners to develop an understanding of their own values, beliefs, and cultures and those of others. Anti-racist education helps children to understand and realise their own rights and the rights of others within the school, within the community, and globally. Anti-racist education helps learners to understand the harmful consequences of racism and to actively challenge it wherever it occurs. But I even have a problem with this, because we are so past the days of when children were calling BAMEs N-words and whatnot. Now it's microaggressions, and it's not overt racism as the term gets thrown about here or there in these documents. It's microaggressions, it's subtle racism, etc., which could be a apparent change in tone of voice. All this bollocks. The goalposts to find the term racist and racism by extension are forever expanding. Anyway, sorry. And of course, anti-racism is anti-white by its very fucking nature, because in these documents it goes on to talk about how white people created the idea of race so they could go around the world pillaging everybody, and apparently now scientists are all working together and agree that race doesn't exist, there's no proof, etc., this is what they're talking about. So, anyway, it also says here that it helps to ensure the learning environment is safe and inclusive without racial inequality or racism, nurturing a historical literacy in learners which helps them to understand all of Scotland's history, including our, this is laughable, historical role in empire, colonialism and transatlantic slavery, and the diversity of Scottish society in the past, helping learners to understand how Scotland's colonial past plays a role in the current everyday lives, acknowledging the successes and impact of minority ethnic historical figures in relation to Scottish and global history. Race equality provides a vehicle for all practitioners to demonstrate their professional values, yada yada. Race equality and anti-racist education recognises that our 21st century learners exist in a multicultural, multi-faith and global community, and as such need to develop as global citizens with an understanding of structural racism, how it impacts on our world and how to overcome it. It helps to develop intercultural competencies, the attitude, skills and knowledge needed to interact positively and confidently with people whom we may perceive to be different, in quotation marks, from us in some way, and in particular where the perceived differences on the grounds of ethnicity. I just love the rhetoric, like, perceived difference. There's a blatant fucking difference. Blatant difference. You know? But it's just perceived, apparently. You know? It's a social construct that we need to deconstruct. Of course. There is a difference, though. And it's not just white people that recognize this difference. Like, everywhere across the world, they recognize the differences. But no, it's only a problem when we do it. Why? Because we're the ones that are being... oh, well, I won't say the word. Begins with a G. I mean, some of these daft examples, like this bit here. In what ways do minority ethnic children and young people in Scotland experience racism? And then it says, the minority ethnic young people felt they had not experienced much overt racism, but they could all give many examples of everyday racism that they had experienced or witnessed. Many described microaggressions. Okay. I find it so difficult to take this shit seriously. Minority ethnic young people born in Scotland had a strong sense of Scottishness, but some found that because of their skin colour they were not perceived as Scottish, because they're not. They're not Scottish. But this is what they're trying to deconstruct. And the Scottish government are working in tandem with all these people. For example, a British Bangladeshi youth shared, they have said, go back to your own country. And I'm like, this is my country. I've been living here all my life. Yes, but you're still not English or whatever country you were born in. This is the problem. Such experiences of racism sometimes eroded young people's sense of belonging, making them feel excluded and alienated. Well, that's because they're living in an alien culture to them, or country to them. You know, it's not our fault. But anyway, so it says here that this section explores the aspects that are required to actively promote and develop race equality and anti-racism in early learning and childcare, schools and community learning settings. In a thematic inspection of race equality in schools, an HMIE report found that schools that demonstrated good practice in promoting race equality also shared an underpinning set of principles in their work. Learners were provided with opportunities to study their own values and those of others, appreciate diversity and develop respect for others. They supported the values in school life of equality, justice and mutual respect. And then it goes on to say here, in a recent PISA report, it was encouraging to note that Scotland ranked joint third of 27 countries during an assessment of the global competence of 15-year-old learners. Performance on individual indicator was, however, varied. And then they go on to define global competence as a multi-dimensional capacity that encompasses the ability to examine global and intercultural issues, understand and appreciate different perspectives and viewpoints, interact successfully and respectfully with others, and take action for collective well-being and, of course, on sustainable development. Yeah, I think that's number 5 now in the reference book. Wow. Just brainwashing our youth with climate nonsense, anti-racist nonsense, feministic nonsense, LGBT nonsense, and sustainable development nonsense. Wonders never cease. They really don't. Already starting to get really conscious of time, 70 minutes in, and I'm still in this diabolical document. But it goes on to say here that responsibilities as an employer, what's this relating to? Systemic change, of course. It is well documented that Scotland's teaching profession does not reflect the demographics of the population. This lack of diversity is likely to be reflected in the profile of staff within learning communities. Research has demonstrated that minority ethnic learners' attainment is positively impacted when their teacher is from a BAME background. Oh, was that right? Is that right? You know, I've heard this argument a few times where they go on to imply that BAME pupils perform better when there's a BAME teacher. BAME pupils succeed and are more likely to get better grades, etc., when there's a BAME teacher. And just in general, they're more likely to turn up for school and whatnot if there's a BAME teacher, you know? So we need more BAME teachers. It's almost as if they've got in-group preference. Something that is considered in these documents as a myth, a concept, made-up concept, a social construct, etc. But let's take this one step further. Of course, so if BAME pupils, right, perform better, etc., better attainment, all that jazz, when there's a BAME teacher, could the same not be said for whites then? And what happens to the white pupils if the teacher's BAME? Or does that not matter? So if a BAME pupil performs lesser when the teacher's white because they can't see themselves, there's no quote-unquote role model, etc., could the same not be said for the white kids then? Or does that not matter? And also interesting to note as well where it says, it's well documented that Scotland's teaching profession does not reflect the demographics of the population. This fucking nonsense has got to stop. It does have to stop, but it ain't going to stop. I'm sick of it. 4% non-white in the 2011 census. Therefore, what they're arguing is that it should be at least Include the at least there, because they wouldn't be caring if it was overrepresented, but they're complaining because they're quote-unquote underrepresented in this bullshit facade of proportional representation. But they want you to have at least 4% BAME teachers. So I've made this argument before, and I will do it again. What happens when the population of BAMEs in this country goes to 10, 15, 20? Does that mean that the population of teachers or the teaching workforce statistics should showcase at least 10, 15, etc. to match the population? So as the population increases, therefore, so do all of these positions. Can you not see what's happening here? It's very easy for people in a vastly majority white country to spew out this rhetoric, but there is malevolent undertones to this. A fucking tsunami of BAMEs are coming your way. The tides are turning. The power is shifting. Slowly, but it's coming. Anyway. Also says that a national working group has published recommendations to improve the diversity of the teaching profession and local authority. And what they mean is less white. They're not talking about shoving in more Polish people in the Scottish workforce, are they? No, they're not. What? So if we have more Polish teachers, is that going to benefit the Polish pupils? No, it's BAMEs. It's non-whites. It's non-Scottish people. But anyway, so our national working group has published recommendations to improve the diversity of the teaching profession, and local authorities have developed initiatives to address the lack of diversity in education staff. What they mean again by that is the fact that there's too many whites. They don't fucking like it. Responsibilities as an employee. Staff are best placed to promote race equality and anti-racist education when they know their own school community well and understand fully its racial, religious and cultural diversity, as well as having a broader understanding of Scotland's diversity and colonial legacy, or lack thereof in this respect. Confidence is required to deliver race equality and anti-racist education, including responding to racist incidents. Opportunities for professional learning are important. Staff benefit from support to reflect the bias and racism. Okay, whatever. And then you've got these questions they want teachers to ask to themselves, you know. To what extent do leaders provide a clear strategic direction for the promotion of race equality and anti-racist education? How is the whole school community, including young people in the local community, involved in this direction? How effectively do leaders evaluate their establishment's approach to this work? How is a diverse workforce actively promoted? It's fucking mental. How do leaders seek and develop productive relationships with parents and community, whatever? And then we have a curriculum which reflects diversity of all. With the curriculum apparently being designed to be coherent, flexible, and enriching as a curriculum that is adaptable and responsive to the diverse needs of individual learners and which reflects the uniqueness of their communities. It's important that all children and young people are represented, see themselves in the curriculum and recognise that it is relevant to them. Until society represents everyone, the question will always be, where do I belong? Do I belong? Representation is vital because it provides the opportunity for your existence to be acknowledged in the world. It's not my fault if you feel like you are not represented in a white country, because this is Scotland after all, so I'm sorry if you're BAME and you don't see yourself, it's because you're not fucking Scottish. It's simplistic. It's simple. But anyway, then it goes on to say that a curriculum which represents everyone involves normalising diversity within the curriculum so that learners routinely see themselves content and imagery that reflects the diversity of culture, yada yada. This normalising is more powerful than one-off lessons that explore diversity or celebrate difference. The latter can have the unintended consequences of othering those who are not from the ethnic group, which is the majority. As celebrating difference may reinforce stereotypes, careful consideration is advised. Normalising diversity within the curriculum as opposed to normalising the white majority ethnic group gives every learner the important message of being valued and belonging. As if our white majority ethnic group's culture and whatnot is being normalised. It's just the way it's always been because it's our country. And then it goes on to say here that in early level, dogs and figures, dressing up clothes, pictures, books and wall displays are all ways to normalise diversity. As the child grows, they can see diversity, for example, in worked examples in mathematics and literature, and through interdisciplinary learning. Portrayals of diversity should avoid stereotyping. Novels can portray strong friendships between characters from different ethnicities or have plots which challenge racial and other stereotypes. They can also develop the empathy of learners through sharing the lived experience of their peers. Oh my god, but this term normalizing diversity, so again, it's like they're trying to drum it into little white children's head that this is normal, and it's not normal. None of this is normal. I mean, look at some of the pictures you've seen throughout the past of like one or two white kids in a classroom full of blacks. That's not fucking normal. But that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to normalize it. And they're trying to proclaim that any concerns you find it remotely strange or abnormal, then you're the problem. You need re-educated. And I just think it's disgusting how we are in a position now where teachers who used to be there simply to teach you mathematics, geography, English, psychology, whatever it may have been, but now they are being actively encouraged to take up the role of progressive activists. They are encouraged to promote the LGBT shite, climate change, sustainable developments, education of sustainability, however they frame it in the educational context, and now anti-racism. I mean, this isn't a secret. The SNP's manifesto talked about it, but this is now coming into fruition. But it's the insidious nature when it comes to teachers, how they are expected to promote this shit, because the SNP, feminist bulldog Shirley Ann Somerville, and that feminist bull-cat-headed little bitch are fucking working in tandem with a bunch of anti-racist experts to try and re-educate your children because they're white. Whew. More questions teachers need to ask themselves, of course, in relation to decolonizing the curriculum is to what extent is diversity normalised and embedded in the curriculum? To what extent do the resources in your setting promote diversity and portray members of all ethnic and cultural groups in positive and non-stereotypical ways? For example, avoiding showing Scots in kilts or black children as poor, helpless Africans. Okay. Do all learners see their culture, ethnicity, faith and experience reflected in the curriculum? I mean, if you move to Scotland and you are a babe, then I'm sorry, if you don't see your culture represented in our books and our history and our school lessons, then it's not a fucking problem. Because if I move to China, then I don't expect to see kilts everywhere. I don't expect to see a seminar on Scottish heritage and history and culture. No, because I'm in China. Oh, fucking sick of it. Like, I really am sick of it. Anti-racist education. It's not enough to recognise and value diversity. Learners need the opportunity to explore stereotypes and prejudice, racism and discrimination. Active and participatory learning methodologies develop the skills, values and attitudes to recognise the prejudice and discrimination, promote equity and action on racial injustice that doesn't exist. You know, and then it goes on and on and on. Sorry, but I'm going to have to move on now. It's just goals for education in the racial framework. Our key goals in innovative, inclusive and effective approaches to education, whether through teaching or pupil support, which take account of individual needs. Minority ethnic pupils are provided with careers guidance that helps us to improve transition into employment and tackles occupational segregation in relation to race. Minority ethnic pupils have confidence and are effectively supported by approaches in schools to prevent and respond to prejudice-based bullying. Scotland's educators are confident and empowered to promote equality, foster good relations and prevent and deal with racism. Scotland's education workforce better reflects the diversity of its communities. See again this fucking bullshit. Minority ethnic people experience better outcomes in completing further and higher education and in transitioning to the labour market after competition. And of course, that better outcome will help to better reflect the diversity of our communities, apparently. Learners are encouraged and supported to understand their individual role in challenging racism, including helping them to develop the tools to analyse and respond to racism and identify how racism exists within society, including institutions, of course. Learners are encouraged to explore how each of us is a unique individual and no one belongs to just one group. Yep. Keep promoting that Sargon of Akkad individualism, of course. But it's funny, though, the irony of this is at the same time they collectivise BAMEs, but yet white kids have to see themselves as individualistic. Strange that, isn't it, really? It really is strange. So this is one of the other ones that came out, of course. This is Introduction to Anti-Racist Curriculum Development. A Guide for Teachers in Scotland. Coalition for Racial Equality and Rights, July 2021. And this is from Sir, as I said earlier on, which was like 25 minutes ago. Jesus Christ. It's getting too long again. So, yeah, let's have a wee mooch through this, shall we? And see what's what. Goes on to say here, of course, that their key missions is to protect, enhance and promote the rights of BAMEs across life, all areas of life in Scotland, and to strengthen the social, economic and political capital of minority ethnic communities, especially those at greater risk of disadvantage. Okay. And obviously the contents of this one. So you've got your introduction. What's different about an anti-racist approach, understanding the barriers to change, decolonizing the curriculum, intercultural competence, reducing racism, prejudice and discrimination, leadership on anti-racist approaches to curriculum development, etc., etc. It really is relentless. Really is relentless at this point. So, as I said, it was to be expected, of course, with the Scottish Government saying so in their manifesto that they were going to be implementing anti-racist education into Scottish academia. Compulsory, of course. So it says that the guideline outlines why anti-racist approaches are important in curriculum development and explores the barriers that have hampered race equality in education. Now, I'm conscious of time, so yeah, bear with me. All teachers in Scotland should feel confident in building a curriculum that meets the needs of a diverse range of learners, which means more and more BAMEs, and improves relationship between children and young people. This can feel like a challenge when divisive influences, bias and stereotypes are present in our society. Anti-racist approaches can help to mitigate against these influences, creating a better environment for learning. Based on SIR's 2 decades of anti-racist work and research on what works to create attitude and behavioural change, this guide will show or support you, to reflect on your own practice within your school more widely. Our aim is to help you build approaches to curriculum development based on robust principles that work to meet BAMEs, their needs, equip majority ethnic learners for life in a diverse society, and improve social cohesion and address racism. So this bit here, though. Again, normalizing the fact that you're becoming entrenched in a more and more non-white society. You need to be equipped with the skills to deal with this. Normalization. The bullet points here, of course, go on to say that decolonizing the curriculum is a priority, and anti-racist approaches, building intercultural competence, and reducing racism, prejudice, and discrimination. So, yeah. In the past, there has been a tendency for some schools to feel that if they have few minority ethnic learners or staff, an anti-racist perspective isn't relevant. Of course, increasing teacher diversity is vital, but it's important that all teachers feel equipped to take forward anti-racist approaches to curriculum development. These approaches benefit everyone within the school community. It's especially important that the work involved is shared across the school, ensuring that it doesn't disproportionately fall on minority ethnic staff to take action. So, what the fuck? The level of diversity in a Scottish school's learner population doesn't determine whether anti-racist approaches are relevant. They are always relevant. As we will explore later in this guide, anti-racist approaches are just as important for white majority ethnic Scottish children as young people, and their learning experience can have an impact on social cohesion in wider society. Likewise, it's never too soon to start this work with children and young people. Embedding anti-racist approaches from early years onwards is crucial. This guide doesn't attempt to prescribe what's appropriate according to age and stage. Teachers know their learners best, so this is something for you to explore, including through involving BAME learners in meaningful ways. Okay. For SIR, endorsed by the Scottish Government, racism is a social construct that impacts every area of life. The term structural racism describes our different facets of racism across different areas of life, all work together to maintain a system that disadvantages and harms people who have been negatively affected by racialization. This is a process where people are divided into racial groups based on stereotypes and pseudoscience, as described at Part 9. Racialization creates advantages for groups classed as white, which can be described as white privilege. This is explored further on page 15. Structural racism exists at a personal, social, and institutional level, plural, in Scotland, with personal racism involving prejudice against people from ethnic backgrounds which have been negatively affected by racialization. Social racism involves the combination of power and prejudice, which allows racial hierarchies to be created and maintained. It can be seen in attitudes, behaviours, and social discourse, narratives, discussions, media, and other ways that societies communicate. This combination of power and prejudice can be seen in all forms of racism, and this is the reason why reverse racism doesn't exist. Acts of anti-white behaviour by non-white people in our society lack the power and influence to become a system of oppression or to alter the racial hierarchies which prioritise white people. I mean, it's fucking... we have come so far from the days where this was just social justice wankers in America screeching in university or college campuses. This is now being implemented into Scottish academia. I have been saying for years that they were tiptoeing their way into the forefront of Scottish academia. They are writing this bullshit, fucking bullshit, in their publications, and it's being promoted by the SNP. Come on! Wow. So, for example, a small proportion of racial hate crimes are targeted towards someone on the grounds that they are white. The traumatic experience of being targeted in this way will not be reflected in other areas of the person's life. They will still be at a relative advantage in the labour market. Fucking wow! 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 I mean, they're just making it up now. They're just making it up. Oh, it's unreal. Scotland isn't monocultural, but the education environment in many cases behaves as though it is. Learning that incorporates perspectives outside of a white Scottish, Western or Eurocentric viewpoint is often regarded as an add-on rather than a core part of everyday learning. What the fuck? Casual and overt racism have undeniable negative impacts on the daily experience of young people, yet both are being overlooked or poorly dealt with in schools. This is something that has to change. Building anti-racist approaches to curriculum development can contribute to making that change, both in terms of prevention and in terms of building your own understanding and confidence in talking about race and racism. So, yeah, anyway. You know, the concept, every publication that I've read, you know, as I said, I made this video earlier on and I forgot to record it with my microphone on. But like when they talk about the transatlantic slave trade, then it goes on to talk about how this might affect BAMEs. And it says the brutality involved can be particularly distressing for young people of African and or Caribbean heritage. In addition, if this is the main or only learning content about people with this heritage that learners are receiving, it can create stereotypes or victimhood, right? But then it goes on to say it's essential, however, that issues around race, racism, history and heritage are part of a young person's overall learning experience. Well-planned activities can help to mitigate against stereotypes by focusing on real people and their wider lives as well as traditions, histories, blah blah blah. But like this constant talk of slavery, right? But we never talk about whites that were enslaved. No, we won't do that. No, we won't. But I mean, if we're going to talk about equality, then surely it would only make sense to teach white kids about all the times that whites were enslaved throughout history. But we won't do that. Well, we know, because this is all about white guilt complexes being enshrined into fucking academic law, and of course creating a divide. Am I not right in saying that? One-sided bullshit. I'm sick of it. Like, I really am. Fucking wow. The key to making celebrating diversity a positive part of learning is ensuring that it's only one part of a whole school approach to anti-racism. A range of resources to support your work in promoting race equality and anti-racist education are available on Education Scotland's Improvement Hub. Yay. Understanding white privilege, of course. Just like the concept of race, the concept of whiteness is something created by society. These things don't exist in nature, but they are so deeply ingrained in our society's way of living that they appear normal. White privilege at its most basic is the privilege that's been seen as normal in comparison to different BAME groups. You know, at its most basic. No. Talk about manipulative shite. Because they're taking the term in-group preference and they're trying to twist it and bend it and contort it to make it into something that it is not. You know, white privilege at its most basic is the privilege of being seen as normal in comparison to different groups. Again, if I went to China, I would be seen as different. Why? Because I'm not Chinese. Why is this only happening in white countries, or in this case, Scotland? Why is this only happening in England? Why is this only happening in Western nations? I'll tell you why. Because this is a deliberate attack against us. But the most disgusting part about this is the deliberate focus and aim at targeting our youth. Because they are the generations of the future. They are the ones that they want to coerce into accepting their new future. Their progressive, post-racial fucking future. There's a quote in here that I commented on it in the last video, and I really, really hope I find it. I really hope I find it, because it really, really rubbed me up the wrong way. Oh, there we go. I found it. In the educational context, white privilege often goes unrecognised because of the seeming contradiction in attainment rates. Oh, it's like seeming, but yeah. Whilst the majority of BAME groups see higher attainment levels, especially for females, which again just blows a hole in the intersectional fucking bullshit, but anyway. While white majority ethnic male learners, Scottish male learners in this context, have notably lower levels of attainment. The reasons for this are complex, and raising attainment for this group is rightly a priority. However, the common fallacy that this group represent the left-behind white working class, while higher BAME groups represent a progressive post-racial future, is highly damaging. You know, if the roles were reversed and it was BAMEs being left behind, you know damn well they would be saying the exact opposite of what they're saying there. It's a fallacy to say they're being left behind. They are! All the things that have been put in place to help these people with their equitable nonsense. Scholarships, diversity quotas, etc., etc., and the constant push and pressure that's been placed on schools and colleges and etc., etc. The constant assumption, accusation that if there isn't enough BAMEs getting high grades, if there isn't enough BAMEs getting into college, that's an example of systemic racism. And the only way to combat this non-existent figment of their imagination is to forcibly prioritise said BAMEs. Thus, by extension, leaving behind white people, white boys. Video's getting too long again, fuck's sake. You know, it goes on to talk about white fragility and how it can be a barrier to productive discussions on race and racism in the classroom. Living a life free from racism and racial stereotyping means that most of the time white people don't experience stress related to race. Having to talk about race, address racism, or be in a space where they become conscious of their racial position can create racial stress, especially for people who aren't used to this. This defensive reaction, the results are known as white fragility. These defensive reactions can include becoming upset, angry, or withdrawing from the conversation to avoid discomfort. This shuts down the potential for a positive outcome and so serves to reinforce and maintain racism. Just fucking stupid, man. I'm only on page 18, but like, I mean, so... These are some of the key questions you can ask yourself if you're a teacher. What is your understanding of race and racism? How would you confidently address overt or subtle forms of racism that might occur in the class? What do you do to keep the focus on impact rather than intention when dealing with racist language? How are you actively finding ways to make the classroom a psychologically safe space for minority ethnic learners? What are you doing to identify the impact of your own practice through a racial lens? What steps can you take to engage with and listen to minority ethnic learners? Curriculum development in Scotland. Okay. Creates both opportunities and challenges for building race equality into the curriculum. The flexibility it provides means that depending on how individual teachers view the importance of race equality within work towards the curriculum experiences and outcomes, their approaches can vary widely. The whole school approach to race equality requires all teachers to have a consistent positive focus on that aspect of teaching. However, this can be challenging to achieve. Personal views and priorities across a wide range of teaching staff may not align. On top of this, capacity and understanding of what constitutes good practice may vary. Interesting. In the context of school education, the concept of coloniality, it's not a word I'm actually familiar with, admittedly, explains how Western and Eurocentric perspectives have become the norm, partly because of the lack of diversity in the education workforce, and more generally because of power imbalances in society that have existed since colonial times. Fucking what the fuck, like... I mean, even before colonial times, white people were still in power in Scotland, but the vast majority of the Scottish people at the time would have been considered peasants, etc. But now, in a post-colonial world where we have BAMEs, whites are still in power, BAMEs ain't, but that's somehow a power imbalance. Fucking hell! They talk about us all being individuals, but at the same time, the white people in that parliament don't represent anybody in this country, irrespective of your colour. These power imbalances determine which viewpoints are regarded as valuable and which types of information schools have traditionally focused on teaching. I mean, what the fuck, man? Such bullshit. The assumptions we make about the importance of Western and Eurocentric perspectives and the irrelevance of the perspective of groups that were negatively affected by racialisation are based on a colonial mindset. No, it's fucking not. It's because you ain't... Oh, my God. I mean... Oh my God, like, I mean, come on! Groups of people were racialised as a way of justifying their oppression by colonial powers such as Britain, with Scottish people playing a key role. Aye, shove that point in there, you babe boots. The impact of this persists into life today, and this is why the concept of decolonising the curriculum has come to the fore. Recognising and exploring the aspects of Scottish and British history that link to empire, colonialism, slavery and migration helps learners to understand how much of these have influenced cultures, tradition and practices today. You know, and it just goes on and on and on and on. Decolonizing the curriculum isn't about abandoning all current approaches or existing work on curriculum development. It's about building a wider range of the perspectives into the work you already do, including seeking out and illuminating the histories and stories of BAMEs in Scotland, as well as taking a more global view in the narrative you use in learning. It's also about recognizing how the power structures of racism can be seen within the curriculum. Decolonizing is an active effort to dismantle these power structures. Decolonizing the curriculum allows you to reconstruct what young people have the opportunity to learn, who they learn about, and how they learn. Eurocentric learning approaches that can cause harm are replaced by approaches that enrich learning, make schools more socially cohesive, and broaden the horizons of all young people, because there's babes now, so it can't be Eurocentric, it needs to be Afrocentric, eh? I know this video's getting really long now, again. To begin thinking about the decolonizing the curriculum, there are particular questions that can help to set out the scene. Who can you see in the curriculum? Who writes the texts and resources you explore with learners? Who created the knowledge society has gained? And where are the notable figures and pioneers from minority ethnic backgrounds? Oh my god. What are the hidden origins of topics or objects which you bring in a more diverse perspective? What world events are included in learning? Where did they happen? And whose perspectives are we portrayed? Are BAME groups telling their own story from their own perspective? Are a diverse range of perspectives normally present throughout the curriculum? Are you working to make sure they aren't sidelined into a diversity niche? Intercultural competence is a concept that recognizes that culture is the product of many factors which shape the worldview of communities. Of individuals and communities, sorry. You know, and it goes on and on and on. And as I said, I'm very, very conscious of the time now. I mean, I said at the beginning I didn't want to make a 50-minute video, and here we are again. But I mean, there's just so much to go through at this point. There's just so much. I'm sorry. But it just goes on about intersectionality. This gets a mention here, and pluralism, two concepts that look at how diverse people are within themselves, are key features of interculturalism, understanding that peoples are individuals, not stereotypes, and that identities are open to interpretation and change. Operative word there, I would assume. Coming to understand intersectionality and pluralism helps young people to realize how false stereotypes are, You know, and then it goes on. Importantly, these intercultural approaches reinforce the fact that discrimination and prejudices are not inevitable results of the presence of minority ethnic people within a majority ethnic community. Instead, racism exists because societies and the people within them lack the ability to live together productively and comfortably, because we're all different. Fuck's sake, this is what they're trying to stamp out. The idea that we are different. Why? To normalize your replacements. You think they're doing this in African countries? Do you think that they're telling them all this shit? No, they're fucking not. They're doing it here. They lack intercultural competence. You're incompetent if you can't see what they want you to see. For the dominant ethnic group in any society, in our case, white majority ethnic Scots, this is magnified because their own ethnic and cultural background is seen as a norm. Because it should be the fucking norm! It's our country! They have the privilege of not being seen in racial terms by others and within media and wider society. I mean, oh my god, like. It goes on and on and on. Racism, prejudice, discrimination, etc. You know, I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. You know. But the last thing that I wanted to leave on, because I really am conscious of the time, and I know I haven't gone into like that great depth, because it does go on and on and on, but I will leave all the links for you. But this bit here, a separate resource aimed particularly at white teachers and written by anti-racism educator Titalahu Farakuyui asks teachers to challenge their own white fragility or defensiveness around matters of race, and never to force a young person to share their experiences of racism in the classroom, right? So if you go on to this one, again, I've gone far too long. Where is it? Is it this one? No. Oh yeah, this one. I mean, look at some of this shit. White fragility. Common patterns of behaviors of white fragility. Brave spaces. Understanding fragility, white fragility. Building towards allyship and change. Creating a safer space, classroom activity, how to create an environment where constructive conversations can happen safely. Power, considering my position of power, my role within the structure. Social identity, considering how our social identity informs our view of the world. A world without race, understanding that the current worldview is 500 years old. This is not the only way humans have lived. It's always been tribalistic though, so you're talking fucking nonsense. Race is a social construct. Taking action. questions to consider for your own practice and questions to consider for your own school. And it just goes on and on. Like, before we start, the topics include things to consider before we get into the classroom. Be confident about using the right terminology, etc., etc. Recognize that they need to put extra care in supporting BAMEs, right? Fragility, common patterns and behaviors of white fragility. Educators will define white fragility, identify white fragility, practice overcoming white fragility, practice how to center the person who has experienced harm. Brave spaces, educators will learn tools on how to address and tackle issues and causes centering people who experience marginality, fuck's sake, I can't even say that word, and oppression. I'm talking too fast, and fuck's sake. It goes on and on and on. A world without race. Educators will become aware of pre-colonial histories and narratives, recognize the vastness of the human story, and the European Western lens is just one perspective of many, but it's ours. It's fucking ours, but no, we want to know about theirs. You know, it goes on and on and on. But, you know, it's like, this unit is for all educators who want to make a start understanding what anti-racism is and how we as teachers and pupils, allies and individuals who with lived experience of racism can start our anti-racist journey. It's like, oh, white supremacy. I mean, what the fuck is white supremacy? The belief that white Europeans, Western culture are superior and therefore destined to rule and regulate over other people who are not white. No, we just want you to fuck off and leave us alone. Whiteness, the system that privileges white people and their actions. Race, a power structure based on the belief in inherent difference between people of different phenotypes, where white European is treated as the most superior group. No, it's... oh my god. Racial trauma. You know, before you start teaching about anti-racism and diversity initiatives in your setting, we strongly suggest that you attend and seek our anti-racism training before you teach and engage your pupils in the topics of race and oppression. It doesn't exist, because if it did exist, you wouldn't be able to publicate such resources, would you? No, but you're getting endorsed by the S&P because you're so fucking oppressed, aren't you? Yeah. Oh man, safeguarding BAMEs in the classroom. Fragility. First, define in your own words what is fragility. Like, this is what they want teachers to do. They want teachers to write this out. What is fragility? What can we observe fragility in? Where can we observe it in social settings? What is white fragility? What's this video? Yeah, well, the video. I wonder who this could be. Oh, interesting. You know, it's not
white fragility is
it's the wee hat Robin DiAngelo. Yeah, so they want teachers to watch Robin DiAngelo dictate and educate and lecture you on white fragility, and then you have to continue to answer questions based on this thesis. What's the overall function of white fragility? Yeah, so you just do your homework with Robin DiAngelo. She'll fill you in on all this bullshit. In the video, DiAngelo asks you to make a personal list of what can be done. What are your personal steps to tackle your white fragility? Assuming that every white teacher has white fragility, is that not a generalization? Is that not the very thing that these BAME dickheads are fucking complaining about on a daily basis? Oh, think about your own life, cultural habits. If you're socialized as white, you grew up in a world where you're consistently told, favor the cultural value, blah, 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 blah. You know, I mean, as I say, it's getting too long. Group discussion. White fragility is a common reaction to confrontation with racism, awareness of or acknowledged presence of race. Brave spaces, right? Now you're familiar with white fragility. The next step is to build brave spaces where these conversations about race and interlinking systems of oppression and impact can be talked about constructively. The goal is to engage with these topics beyond blame and guilt and to transform them into something productive, a step towards positive change. Oh, fuck's sake. Familiarize yourself with these materials. Yeah, of course, do so. Yeah, of course. It just goes on and on and on and on and on and on. And I don't have time to go through this all, I really don't. But again, further reading, White Fragility, Robin DiAngelo again. Me and White Supremacy, Layla Sad. She sounds very white. Creating a safer space. Discuss ideas in pairs. Encourage learners to share in pairs and take notes of the feelings and physical attributes of their safe space. So again, this is a lesson plan. In person, sit on the floor in a circle, dim lights, ensure there are no loud noises next door. Allow learners to turn off the... Anyway. Think about places and situations where you can fully be yourself. Encourage learners to think of neutral spaces, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I don't know. As I said, I haven't really gone through all of this. But, like, again, so they're including kids in this now. To start you off, take the white privilege test set out by the Anti-Racist Educator Collective. Oh, my God. I've done this. I made a video on the Anti-Racist White Privilege Test. to try to take the test as a group, perhaps among your colleagues. If you are ethnically, racially, religiously diverse, then you are good to go. If you're a more homogenous group, consider filling out the test from the perspective of yourself as well as picking up the test. It's fucking insanity that I honestly, I've made a video on this. I made a video on this stupid test. I passed with flying colours, I guess, by the way. I'll just add that. I can't believe this. After the test, what was your score? Did you expect it? What struck you about it? I mean, it's aimed explicitly. All the questions are ridiculous. Fucking ridiculous. I'll even link my video to this in the description. It's ridiculous. After taking the test, how would you explain white privilege now? Fucking bullshit. That's how I'd explain it. But they're wanting to ingrain this shit in the teacher's head so then they can then take forward the crap that they've been brainwashed into believing and pass it on to children. Endorsed by the SNP. Fuck's sake. Oh, I'm so wound up. In your work and every day, where might you have the power that is not afforded to a BAME in the same position? I mean, it's just ridiculous. If a BAME's in the same position, he's afforded the same power. Oh, wow. But it goes on, social identity, blah, blah, blah. You know, a world without race, of course. Before we look at race, we need to build a basic understanding of the legacy of racialized peoples, you know, because BAMEs were racialized, you know. It's not like humans since the beginning of time have been tribalistic in nature. No, it's nothing to do with that at all. Have you noticed that in most depictions, the Egyptians as well as Jesus are white? What might that have to do with our distorted view of the non-Western world? Maybe it's to do with the fact that there's a lot of evidence to suggest that ancient Egyptians are more closely related to Europeans than the current fucking Africans that live there today. That we was kings and shit. Yeah, of course. There's a social construct, race, apparently. It goes on and on and on. Again, take note on how they define sex. Fucking hell. Taking action. How will you take forward what you've learned? How can you take forward an anti-racist approach? Find below a set of questions, interrogations as a starting point that you could base your research and thinking on. You know, in school, is there a network for BAMEs? Well, there's not one for whites only, so why should there be one for BAMEs? What efforts are you making to diversify the curriculum? Are you embedding anti-racist proxies into your curriculum? Are your school recording numbers in the attainment gap in relation to race? And what are you doing to breach it? Are you supporting school leavers of colour? And black school leavers. What about white school leavers? Shouldn't you just support, if you're going to go down that route, shouldn't you just support all school leavers? But no, we need special privileges for BAMEs because apparently they're oppressed despite the fact that every single institution seems to be pandering to their every fucking beck and call. Oh, are BAME parents involved in the school community? Well, if they want to be, they'll be involved. If they don't want to be involved, then fuck them. And quite frankly, I mean, if they're buying into all this nonsense, why would they want to be involved? Because apparently the school hates them because they're BAME. It's a vicious circle. Do you report racist incidents in school? Blah, blah, blah. In your classroom, do you talk about race and injustice in your classes? Why the fuck should they be? They're there to teach algebra, geography, psychology, not to teach them that BAMEs are oppressed and that whites are pieces of shit. And black students and students of colour use their cultural knowledge and expertise to their benefit in your class. Fucking what the fuck? Who are the people and stories that feature in your class materials? I bet they're white. Yeah, of course they are. Do you build narratives, cultures, and identities of people who are underrepresented in the mainstream? Oh, wow. What not to do? There are endless examples of what not to do. This is not to scare you off, but to emphasize that you're likely to get it wrong at times. Therefore, it's key that you remain open, that you listen to people with lived experience, and you continue to learn and expose yourself to work by BAME thinkers. This is a journey. Yes, this is a journey to continuing the fucking hell, I can't talk. I'm talking so fast, and I'm trying to rush here. The eradication of our nation, our culture. All, of course, indulged and endorsed by the SNP. Really sorry this video took an hour. It is what it is, you know? Peace.